Good morning, everyone. Great to be here today with all of you. Very excited to be here with the Deputy Prime Minister and Finance Minister, Chrystia, to talk about something we're doing on affordability. Giancarlo, thank you so much for welcoming us here to Vince's. As a strong independent grocer, you've had a real impact on people's lives. You've also seen over the past years the challenges folks have faced, and we're glad to make a big announcement today. Tony and Francesco, it's great to be back in the region. Great to be here with all of you to talk about how we're going to make life more affordable for so many people. L'annonce qu'on fait aujourd'hui va faire beaucoup d'heureux. La trajectoire de notre économie est dans la bonne direction. On est en train de voir l'inflation diminuer, on est en train de voir les taux d'intérêt diminuer. On a une bonne croissance économique prévue pour 2025. On est en train de voir l'économie reprendre, mais en même temps, les gens ont besoin d'aide. C'est pour ça qu'on est allé de l'avant avec plusieurs mesures qui sont en train d'enlever de la pression sur leur compte de banque, que ce soit les soins dentaires qui aident les aînés et d'autres, que ce soit des places en garderie à 10 $ par jour à travers le pays, qui enlève des milliers de dollars de pression sur les familles, que ce soit le programme de nourriture dans les écoles qui va enlever de la pression pour les parents, que ce soit d'autres initiatives comme l'insuline ou les contraceptions sur ordonnance gratuites. On est en train de faire beaucoup de choses pour enlever de la pression pour les familles, mais on sait qu'on peut en faire encore plus. The programs that we're delivering, whether it's dental care, whether it's pharmacare with free insulin or free prescription contraceptives, whether it's more spaces and $10 a day child care that is saving families thousands of dollars, whether it's dental care that's taken huge pressures off of primarily seniors' budgets, but also others. These are things that are making a difference, but at the same time, Canadians are still struggling to get by. These elements have taken off pressures, but there is more to do. As the holidays approach, families, especially parents, are particularly worried. Canadians have been through a lot. They work hard. We see that. We've been able to get through the past couple of years. Everyone had to tighten their belts a little bit. And now we're going to be able to give a tax break for all Canadians. For 2 months, starting December 14th, we're going to remove the GST, HST from groceries, 100% of groceries, all groceries. We're going to remove the GST from restaurant meals, takeouts, fast food. Removing the GST from beer and wine. Removing the GST for essentials like kids' clothing, footwear, diapers, and toys, all tax-free, removing the GST and HST. For 2 months, Canadians are going to get a real break on everything they do. We also know that there's more we need to do, particularly for working Canadians. So if you worked in 2023 and earned up to $150,000, we're going to be sending you a check for $250 in just a few months. Our government can't set prices at checkout, but we can put more money in people's pockets. The Working Canadians rebate of $250, which will be sent to people in April, is going to give people that relief they need. And the tax break over the next 2 months is going to help on the costs of everything as we approach the holidays, as we get into the new year. These are things that recognize that people are squeezed, and we're there to help. Money that will help people buy the things they need and save up for the things they want. And the final comment is that I really hope that all parties in the House get behind this so we can pass this quickly, so that Canadians can get this relief as soon as December 14th. Merci beaucoup tout le monde d'être ici. Looking forward to taking your questions in a moment, but for now, I'm going to pass it over to someone who's been working very hard to deliver this support for Canadians, Chrystia Freeland, our Finance Minister. Chrystia.
Thanks, Prime Minister. The Prime Minister is a little bit taller than I am. Okay, well, I want to start by saying, buongiorno Giancarlo, grazie mille per l'accoglio. It is really wonderful to be here at Vince's, which is a local institution, a place that is trusted and I'm going to say beloved by families in this community. Ça me fait plaisir d'être ici au cœur de cette communauté si importante, si proche, pour faire des annonces qui vont vraiment aider les Canadiens et Canadiennes de la classe moyenne avec l'enjeu qui leur inquiète le plus, l'enjeu de l'affordabilité. Before coming out to make our announcement, the Prime Minister, Tony, Francesco, and I had a chance to talk to Giancarlo. Tony and Francesco know him well and know Vince's very well. And it was such a valuable window into the life of this community and also into the lives of Canadians. And what Giancarlo told us, you can see what has been happening in the Canadian economy at the checkout counter here at Vince's. He talked about how things were really hard for Canadians at the beginning of this year, that, inflation was coming down, but interest rates were still high. And that was really biting in the pocketbook. And he saw it with what people were able to afford to buy here. One thing that Giancarlo told us that I really loved is he said he could almost measure the trajectory of interest rates by what people were doing at the cash register here. And as rates have come down, people have been coming back into Vince's and have been able to spend a little bit more. So that story from Giancarlo makes him my favorite person of the day. Grazie mille. That's exactly what we know Canadians need. Canadians needed that relief. And the good news is, now that inflation is under control, it has been within the Bank of Canada's target range for 10 months in a row. That has allowed the bank to bring down rates, and that has created the space for us to provide a little more relief for hard-working Canadians. And so today we're announcing two really important forms of support. The first you're going to see at the cash register here at Vince's and at grocery stores, at restaurants, at toy stores across the country. This is going to be about giving just a little bit of extra help to families over the holidays from the middle of December to the middle of February. We are going to have a GST holiday on all prepared foods. So right now, some foods are not subject to GST, but prepared foods are. Things like a rotisserie chicken. Things like, if you have had a really busy day and you have to feed your kids at the end of the day, maybe you're tempted to go to the grocery store and pick up a prepared meal, but it's expensive. And on top of the extra cost of a prepared meal, you have to pay the GST. And Giancarlo has been telling us, he sees young working families wanting to buy those prepared meals, but sometimes they can't quite afford it. Lifting the GST is going to make it that little bit easier. And it comes just in time for the holidays, when people are going to want to be entertaining, are going to want to have people over. So prepared foods, lifting the GST. Restaurant meals, lifting the GST. That's going to include beer and wine, no GST. And Giancarlo does sell beer and wine here. So you're going to be able to do that at your grocery stores, your gas stations, where beer and wine are available. And it's the holidays. So we're also lifting the GST on a carefully chosen basket of holiday gifts. Kids' clothes, diapers, car seats, kids' shoes. It includes things like like toques, like mitts for your kids, scarves. Also on toys for your kids, also on books and periodicals. So this is really about saying to Canadians, things have been hard. They are getting better. Our economy really looks like it is having a soft landing from the COVID recession. And this is about making life a little bit easier because we have the space now to do it. Le deuxième annonce, c'est pour aider directement les Canadiens et Canadiennes, les travailleurs et les travailleuses partout au pays. Et ce sera l'appui qu'ils recevront en avril. Comme le Premier ministre a dit, nous allons envoyer les chèques de 250 $ à chaque Canadien et Canadienne qui a travaillé pendant 2023 et a gagné 150 000 $ au moins. These checks for $250 are about recognizing that working Canadians have been through some tough times. And this is about providing direct support to the people who have been working hard to get us through some tough times, and the people who we are counting on to power Canada's economic recovery. I do want to offer one piece of practical advice. We want to know if you were working in 2023. So please, if you haven't filed a tax return, file your tax return by December 31st. That will make it possible for us to send you that check for $250. It's going to be paid on an individual basis to everyone who worked in 2023 and made $150,000 or less. So support for working people, the people who have really gotten our country through a tough time and who we're counting on to really power a very strong recovery at the end of this year and next year. Merci beaucoup pour votre temps et nous sommes prêts à répondre à vos questions.
We'll now begin the question period. One question, one follow-up.
Hey,
Our first question will go to iPolitics.
Hey, good morning, Prime Minister. Barbara with iPolitics. How are you?
Very well, thank you, Barbara.
Good. I'm just going to pass along some questions from my editor, Marco Vigliotti. So do you think any of this would be happening today if the Liberals weren't so reliant on the NDP for support in the House?
I'm glad the NDP has indicated it's going to be behind us on moving forward on a GST rebate, a GST break for the next 2 months. This is another thing we're stepping up to do on top of all the measures we put forward for affordability over the past years. Things like dental care, things like dropping child care costs to $10 a day and expanding accessibility for it. We're moving forward on pharmacare, which is free insulin for those who need it and free prescription contraceptives for people who need it. We're moving forward on a school food program. It's going to take hundreds of dollars off Canadians' grocery bills. These are things that we've been focused on throughout. Now, in the House right now, the Conservatives continue to vote against all of our affordability measures and are even blocking the work we're doing to pass a number of these measures to deliver for Canadians. We're glad to see the NDP looks like it's going to get behind us and allow Parliament to deliver these things for Canadians, but we're all going to work together at it.
Thank you. So you said earlier this year in an interview that giving checks to Canadians would increase inflation. So why are you willing to do this right now, especially considering that rising inflation is what has prompted the Bank of Canada to drive up interest rates? And if you can also say that in French, please.
Sorry, that was a couple of years ago where global inflation had the Bank of Canada needing to respond by raising interest rates. And we stepped forward in direct measures like reducing child care costs, like delivering dental care, moving forward in ways that were supporting families without impacting directly on inflation. Inflation is down. We're back down. We've been close to a year within the target range that the Bank of Canada set, which is why the Bank of Canada is now dropping interest rates faster than for most of our peer countries. And it allows us to make sure that we are putting money in people's pockets in a way that is not going to stimulate inflation, but is going to help them make ends meet and continue our economic growth. This is something that we're doing because, and we're able to do because Canada has one of the strongest balance sheets in the world, the lowest deficit in the G7, the lowest debt to GDP ratio in the G7, and decreasing. We have a strong fiscal position. We're putting it to work for supporting Canadians with a tax break for all Canadians and with checks, rebates for working Canadians. Yeah, you can add something. I'll answer in French. Nous avons, depuis des mois, depuis des années, investi pour aider les Canadiens à passer à travers ces moments difficiles avec des investissements comme dans les soins dentaires, comme dans de l'aide pour des places en garderie, qui n'a pas ajouté à l'inflation. Au contraire, on a vu l'inflation mondiale baisser au Canada et ça fait presque un an qu'on est dans la cible visée par la Banque du Canada pour l'inflation, ce qui a amené la Banque du Canada à réduire les taux d'intérêt et nous mettre maintenant dans une position où on peut donc en faire plus pour les Canadiens. Alors, par-dessus tous les programmes comme la nourriture pour les écoles qu'on est en train de faire, on peut maintenant donner un congé de taxes à tous les Canadiens pour 2 mois à partir de la mi-décembre sur l'épicerie, sur des jouets, sur des arbres de Noël, sur des livres, sur toutes sortes de choses qui sont importantes pour les Canadiens, sur les restaurants. Et on peut livrer de l'argent dans les poches des Canadiens qui va faire une grosse différence dans leur vie. Alors, on est là pour aider et je suis content que les autres partis sont en train de se ranger derrière nous pour livrer concrètement pour les Canadiens qui ont besoin d'appui.
I just wanted to add a couple of elaborations on what the Prime Minister just said. So I really welcome the question because it was a very intentional policy of our government to focus first and foremost on inflation and interest rates. We recognized exactly what Giancarlo saw at the cash register here. We recognized that the single biggest pain point for Canadians was the high interest rates that the Bank of Canada imposed because inflation was high. The Canadian economy is uniquely sensitive to high interest rates because Canadian people are sensitive to high interest rates. We tend to have 5-year mortgages, and so when interest rates went up, it really hurt Canadian families. And like, don't ask me, ask Giancarlo, because they were buying less stuff here. They couldn't afford it. We knew we had to do everything we could to support inflation coming down and interest rates coming down. And the good news for Canadians is that is happening. As the Prime Minister said, for 10 months in a row, inflation has been in the Bank of Canada's target range, and the bank has now lowered rates 4 times. That is really good news for Canadians. The other reality is, right now, the challenge in the Canadian economy is as much on the consumer demand side. You know, where we are seeing some fragility in the economy is what Giancarlo sees here in his store, that Canadian consumers are squeezed and they are not able to go out and spend. That's a problem for Canadian families. It's also a problem for the Canadian economy. And so this measure is affordability measure. It's about making it better and easier for Canadian families. It's also going to be good for our economy by helping Canadians, by helping Canadian families go out and buy those groceries they need, buy the things their families need for their holidays, buy their kids a new coat or a new toque and put it under the Christmas tree. And there's going to be no GST on Christmas trees as well. Or a Lego set.
Who wants to get a hat for Christmas?
I'm such a boring mom, right? It's true. Yes, okay, a Lego set as well as your cute toque. Also, plush toys and dolls are included, so are video games. And that is going to be good for Canadian families. It's going to provide them the relief they need, and it's also good for the economy at this time, because we as a government and as a country have done the hard work we needed to do to get inflation down and put interest rates on a downward path.
Next question.
Bonjour, Lunane Charpentier de Radio-Canada. Une question en français pour vous. Le congé de taxes pour les Canadiens, les chèques, c'est des mesures qui vont coûter très cher. Est-ce que le gouvernement peut se permettre de telles mesures?
On a une des meilleures, ou sinon la meilleure situation fiscale de tous les pays du G7. On a le plus faible déficit. On a le plus bas taux de PIB par rapport à notre endettement parmi tous nos pairs, et on veut mettre, et on prévoit une grande croissance économique pour l'année prochaine. Même si on a tout ça, les Canadiens en arrachent. Et c'est pour ça qu'on se dit qu'on va mettre la situation fiscale positive du gouvernement au service des individus. C'est pour ça qu'on peut faire un congé de taxes pour les familles. C'est pour ça qu'on peut livrer la remise canadienne pour les travailleurs au mois d'avril. 250 $ pour tout le monde qui fait moins que 150 000 $ par année. C'est de l'aide directe pour les Canadiens qui n'ont pas eu ça facile au fil des dernières années, et on met les effectifs du gouvernement au service directement des Canadiens.
Vous répondriez aux gens qui pourraient dire que ces mesures sont simplement électoralistes ou purement politiques?
On a démontré au cours des dernières années qu'on est là pour aider les Canadiens avec la nourriture scolaire, avec des soins dentaires, avec une augmentation sur la pension de vieillesse pour les aînés de 75 ans et plus. On était là avec plus de places en garderie à 10 $ par jour à travers le pays. On est là avec de l'insuline, pour de l'insuline gratuite, pour des médicaments, des prescriptions à ordonnance, des contraceptions à ordonnance gratuites. Depuis les débuts, on voit où les Canadiens en arrachent, et on est en train d'investir et de livrer pour les aider. Et maintenant que l'inflation est basse, maintenant que les taux d'intérêt commencent à redescendre, on peut mettre de l'argent directement dans les poches des travailleurs avec la remise canadienne, et on peut donner un congé de taxes pour les Canadiens pour finir cette année et commencer l'année prochaine. C'est ce qu'on fait pour mettre le gouvernement et la situation fiscale solide de notre gouvernement au service directement des Canadiens qui en ont besoin.
Next question.
Michelle Song, CBC News. Now that the ICC has issued warrants for Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and his former Defense Minister Yoav Gallant, Canadian law enforcement is obligated to arrest them should they come to Canada. Will you allow that to happen, or will you step in to prevent an arrest?
First of all, as Canada has always said, it's really important that everyone abide by international law. This is something we've been calling on from the beginning of the conflict. We are one of the founding members of the International Criminal Court, the International Court of Justice. We stand up for international law, and we will abide by all the regulations and rulings of the international courts. This is just who we are as Canadians. At the same time, we need to keep working to solve this terrible situation. We need to see aid flowing in to people who are facing famine and disease. We need to see all the hostages released. We need to see Hamas lay down its arms. We condemn Hamas for its continued actions. We need to see a ceasefire that protects civilians. We need to get back on track towards a two-state solution with a peaceful Israel living alongside a peaceful Palestinian state. These are the things that Canada has been working on. And at the same time, we have to recognize as Canadians that it's been very, very difficult for members of different communities in this country. We have to remember who we are, be there for each other, understand that people are angry and grieving, but remember that we are all pushing for peace and stability as hard as we can. Depuis les débuts, nous soulignons à quel point c'est important pour tout le monde de respecter le droit international. Le Canada est un des fondateurs de nos systèmes de droit international et on va toujours suivre les décisions et les règlements de ces instances. En même temps, il faut se souvenir que tout ce qu'on est en train de faire est en train de travailler pour la paix et la stabilité dans la région. On a besoin d'un cessez-le-feu, on a besoin que Hamas dépose ses armes, on a besoin de voir les otages libérés, on a besoin d'avoir beaucoup plus d'aide humanitaire livrée à ceux qui en ont besoin. On a besoin d'un cessez-le-feu et à Gaza et au Liban. On a besoin de se remettre sur la voie d'une solution à deux États, avec un État palestinien paisible et sécure, à côté d'un État israélien paisible et sécure. Ici au Canada, les gens qui ont mal, les gens qui ont de la peine, qui sont fâchés par ce qui s'est passé, on a besoin d'être là pour eux aussi. On a besoin de démontrer qui nous sommes en tant que Canadiens pour être là les uns pour les autres, même s'il y a des différends politiques, parce qu'on veut tous la paix, la stabilité et la protection des innocents.
Inflation has given the government revenues a big boost. How much or what share of this windfall in sales tax revenues are you giving back to Canadians with these moves today?
The increase in global inflation has forced the Bank of Canada had raised its interest rates, but now that inflation has come down back to the target range in Canada and have been for 10 months, interest rates are coming down once again, which is providing real relief for Canadians. But even with that, Canadians need a tax break. And that's what we're delivering. As we take the GST, HST off of all groceries, off of restaurants and takeout and fast food, off of toys, off of children's clothes, off beer and wine. These are things that are going to help Canadians as they approach not just Christmas and the holidays, but the beginning of the new year as well. We know people are under pressure. This is there to help them, and the Working Canadians rebate, $250 for Canadians who worked in 2015 and made less than $150,000. These are things that are going to help at a time where Canadians need that help.
Next question.
Nathaniel Dove, Global News. You mentioned you're taking taxes off of things like video games and video game consoles. How does that help people who are struggling, who likely can't afford those or are unlikely to buy them anyways?
One of the things that we've focused on very much over the past years has been targeted relief for those who most need it. Seniors over 75 who had been facing a rise in costs or in medical bills, we increased OAS for them. We know families who don't have dental insurance, couldn't afford dental care, needed extra help. We've been investing to support people in targeted ways who were among the most vulnerable across the country. This is a measure that recognizes that everyone has been facing the pinch. And that's why all Canadians get a tax break for the 2 months from mid-December to mid-February. This is a time where, yes, people are buying toys for their kids, so we're moving forward on a tax break on toys. But regardless of whether or not you celebrate Christmas, people gather for the holidays with family. So restaurants, takeout, prepared food and groceries, all grocery stores. No GST, HST. Moving forward on kids' clothes, including kids' winter clothes, boots, shoes. These are things that people care about that matter for them. And seeing that Canadians have been squeezed and being able to do something direct for them on top of the many measures we've put forward is about recognizing that we are now in a better place in our economy And it's time for people to get a bit of a break to be able to enjoy that.
You previously railed against the Harper government for sending, as you said, checks to the wealthy. $150,000 is a pretty healthy income, and the checks, the rebates will go to those people. How do you justify this now?
We started in 2015 by creating the Canada Child Benefit, where we took a number of previous benefits that Conservatives had created that were boutique targeted, that were going to wealthy Canadians. They were sending child benefit checks to millionaire families. We made it means tested and delivered hundreds of dollars a month tax-free to families in the middle class and those working hard to join it who really needed it. That was money in their pockets that made a huge difference for Canadians. That's something that we believed in. We didn't believe in sending child benefit checks to millionaires. So now as we're moving forward with a working Canadians rebate, we are saying, no, we're not going to send that $250 rebate check to millionaires. We're sending it to people who are working, who make less than $150,000. I will highlight that costs have gone up for everyone, and even someone making $130,000, $140,000 a year is cutting back on restaurants, is thinking twice about what groceries they can buy, is being thoughtful about the price pressures on us all. So we see middle-class Canadians, and we're going to be there to help them out as well. This is a choice we're making that is delivering for Canadians at a time where, yes, our economy is turning the corner, but people are still facing that squeeze. This will help us get through it. The way we all pulled together to get through COVID, the way we all pulled together as Canadians when times get tough. This is about being there for Canadians when they need it, with a tax break for all Canadians.
Next question.
Hi, Monique Malima, Bloomberg News. How do these tax breaks square with your pledge to be fiscally responsible, and how does the government plan to pay for this? Will it be tax raises elsewhere, cuts to spending, or a deeper deficit?
Again, Canada has the strongest balance sheet in the G7. We have the lowest debt to GDP ratio of all of our peer countries. We have a fiscal track that the Parliamentary Budget Officer has just said is totally and absolutely sustainable. Canadians can have confidence in the Canadian economy and in its future, because the world has confidence in Canada's economy in the future. Foreign direct investment, companies investing in Canada, is actually up 60% since 2015. And just last year, we were in absolute terms third in the world for companies coming to invest in Canada, in Canadian workers, in Canadian future. That makes us #1 per capita in the G20 for foreign investment. Canada is on a solid footing. Our macroeconomy is doing well, but that's why we're choosing to put that in service directly of Canadians. Canadians who need it with dental benefits, Canadians who need it with pharmacare, with insulin and prescription contraceptives, Canadians who need support for groceries through the school food program, Canadians who are saving thousands of dollars because we've dropped childcare down to $10 a day in most of the country and are expanding spaces. These are things we are doing for Canadians because our fiscal balance sheet is strong, because we have been fiscally responsible to bring down inflation and to see interest rates coming down as well, even as we are investing in housing, investing in bringing in investments and creating jobs and careers for the future.
The NDP called for removing GST on home heating and other monthly bills. Why was that not included?
I'm pleased that the NDP is getting behind us on this tax break for all Canadians. We have seen, unfortunately, for the past months in the House of Commons, the Conservatives have been blocking legislation that could be passed on accelerating dental benefits for Canadians, on moving forward on supports for families. And for the NDP to say, okay, enough is enough, let's actually get Parliament working to deliver for Canadians. It's about time. We know the Conservatives didn't care about dental benefits or the school food policy. They voted against them, so they're fine blocking it in the House. But I know the NDP actually supports our national school food program. The NDP actually supports dental care. So it's been bewildering to me to see them sit back, cross their arms, and allow Parliament to be bogged down in procedural filibusters that the Conservatives are choosing to do and not being able to deliver concretely for Canadians. So to see the NDP getting behind us on a tax break for all Canadians, on support for Canadian families, on delivering money in the bank accounts and pockets of working Canadians, these are things that we should be pulling together as a Parliament, and I'm hoping all parliamentarians will get behind us on this.
Thank you. Last question.
Hi, Prime Minister. Laura Stone, Globe and Mail. I think when people saw that this announcement was being made, they saw Jagmeet Singh sort of take credit for it preemptively last night. They thought maybe you'd struck a deal with the NDP to end the privilege debate with this announcement. It sounds like the NDP isn't prepared to do that, and they want to use other motions to support this measure. What kind of discussions are you having with that party to get Parliament moving again?
I am certainly hopeful that the NDP will see that a frozen Parliament doesn't deliver for Canadians. Like I said, the Conservatives have been blocking all the affordability measures that we've been putting forward, and to see the NDP tacitly agreeing with them has been a little confusing for a lot of progressives across the country. So with this measure that has to get through Parliament and get through Parliament quickly so people can start feeling that relief at that tax break as soon as mid-December comes around, the NDP is going to have to step up and get beyond the freeze that we're seeing in Parliament. But I hope all parliamentarians get behind these measures. These are measures that we can deliver because our fiscal situation is strong, but we need to deliver because Canadians certainly need this support.
Okay, and just on the USMCA, the Mexican president says that you told her personally you were not in favor of kicking Mexico out of the agreement. Can you expand on your conversations with her, and why is your finance minister, maybe Minister Freeland can remark also, leaving the door open to that as Canada's position?
We have exactly the same position. We have an absolutely outstanding trade deal right now between our three countries. The USMCA, CUSMA, New NAFTA, whatever you want to call it, has been incredibly successful for the Canadian economy, for the US economy, and for the Mexican economy. This is something that we would like to see continue. That is my first choice. There have been real and genuine concerns raised about Chinese investment into Mexico that I brought up directly with the Mexican president, that a number of people have noted, that I know the three countries are going to have to lean in and work on. We're leaving all doors open because my job is, and always will be, to stand up for Canadian workers, to stand up for the Canadian economy, to stand up for Canadian interests. That's what guided us through President Trump's first term. That's what will guide us through this second term. We will fight for Canadians. We will secure Canadian jobs and Canadian growth long into the future. Ideally, we do that as a united North American market. But pending decisions and choices that Mexico has made, we may have to look at other options. But let me just say it again. My ideal situation is we continue to work well together to protect jobs in North America from overcapacity or economic coercion that other countries have been responsible for.
Thank you, Prime Minister. That